Okay, so I've messed around a lot with companions, and I know they're pretty damn strong, able to handily clear missions on their own, but oh, god damn it, they just keep dying. I want to mod my companion for nothing but damage, damage, and more damage. None of this survivability shit. If only we can give these little guys some good survivability arcanes, like a better version of Aegis that lasts for almost twice as long and can be procced on command. That would be neat. Anyway, I found a way to give companions a better version of Arcane Aegis that lasts for almost twice as long and can be procced on command. Okay, so Reinforced Bond is a universal companion mod which provides you with two effects. The first is that when your companion has over 1,200 shields or overshields, you get a 60% fire rate buff to your primary and secondary weapons, and this is what most people choose to use this mod for. The second half of this mod causes reloading a weapon to restore 150 shields to your companion, which has the ability to float into overshields. It's pretty obvious how these two parts of the mod fit together. You reload a bunch to give your companions overshield to then get a fire rate buff, to shoot faster, mag dump more, reload quicker, heal companion, rinse and repeat. This mod is really nice and works really well on two main kinds of weapons. Those with an exceptionally slow fire rate and no mod capacity to fit any more, or those which reload after a single shot, like the Exegesis, which allows you to give your companions the occasional shield regen. And for this setup, we're using neither of them. Introducing the Azima, a weapon acquired from the Daily Tribute, which lets you do your best Vauban impression when you hit alt-fire, as it empties your magazine to fire out a projectile disc turret. The reason why this is so ideal is because it lets us empty our magazine a hell of a lot faster than other weapons. But we aren't going to reload it manually, god no. See, there's a set of mods called the Synth set, which passively reloads your holstered weapons at a rate of 5% of their maximum magazine capacity per second, for each mod you have equipped. This effect is additive with similar effects like eject magazine. Now, you've probably put two and two together by now that every time we reload using the synth set, it counts as a reload, meaning our companion restores 150 shields, activating their shield gate. Now, you may be thinking, well, it only gives them 150 shields a second, which only gives them a shield gate duration of 0.9 seconds, so I would hardly call that immortal. There's a 0.1 second gap where they're vulnerable. Which would be true if the synth set reloaded 5% of the magazine at the end of the second. But no, it reloads 5% of the magazine across the second. Meaning if we have 100 bullets in our magazine and allow the synth set to reload, then we replenish 5 ammo per second, meaning we're giving our companions shields 5 times per second, or every 0.2 seconds.
I don't understand! We threw everything we had at him! How is he still standing?
How? Well, it's quite simple, really. You see, girlie, you may think you got me all figured out, but there's one thing you didn't account for. My numbers are bigger than yours. Funny thing, really. Get to a high enough level and you're basically untouchable. My wounds heal faster than you can make them. We could do this all day and you would not be any closer to beating me. Not that it wouldn't be fun. But I've got good news. You see, there's no need to wonder where your god is. Because he's right here. And he's fresh out of mercy.
Now, this is already pretty good, but by adding the entire synth set and eject magazine, for a combined total of 40% reload per second, with a magazine capacity of 100, we would grant our companion 150 shields every 0.025 seconds, or 6,000 shields per second. However, because of reasons I'll get into a bit later, this isn't actually ideal and we want to stay at 5% reloaded per second. In theory, this works on any weapon with a magazine capacity over 18, since that means we restore shields every 0.9 seconds, but the higher the magazine capacity, the more consistent this is, as the shield regen is more frequent. Now, the best part about all this is it requires 2 mods, one synth mod of your choice, and Reinforced Bond. And because the reload speed is a fixed 5%, it means it takes a full 20 seconds to fully reload your weapon, so your companion is immortal the entire time because they're constantly getting more shields. Now, the only snag with this setup is A, toxin procs, and B, whenever you swap back to your Azima to alt fire, your companion is vulnerable. Since the synth set only reloads your holstered weapon, by swapping to the Azima, it's no longer holstered, meaning no more passive reload, so no more shield regen, so no more immortality for your companion. But hey, just make sure that when you do swap off that your primary weapon is at least partially unloaded and you're golden, as it'll continue to generate shields still. And I know that not everyone has the Azima, but the Twin Gricadas and Twin Vipers modded for maximum fire rate and magazine capacity for the Vipers to get it above 40 is a really good alternative. Not as good since they can't dump their entire mag with a single alt fire, but they can dump it pretty quickly. And if you wanted to use your secondary weapon as your main damage dealer, then you might consider running the Tenant Tetra instead. With a magazine capacity of 80 at base and an alt fire that dumps the entire magazine at once, you can mod it entirely for elements, status chance, and blast radius to make it a good primer tool instead, opening your secondary weapon up for a damage option like I mentioned earlier. Now, what does this setup enable? Well, companions. Duh. But for real, it allows for damaging options like the Crescent Vulpaphyla, Mecha Predacites and Kubros, Manifold Hounds, and Vergalas Robotics to be far more consistent in their DPS, as well as allowing supportive options like Manifold Hounds, a Priming Diriger, Energy Generator Death Cube, Detect Vulnerability Helios, Crit Buffing Adaza, and yes, even the Panzer Vulpaphyla to be far more consistent in the support and buffs that they provide. Because as we all know, spending less time on your butt is a huge DPS increase. And higher companion uptime is only one reason why you should run this synergy. Because we solve the whole survivability issue, it frees up mod space so we can run more utility and buffs for our Warframe, like Seismic Bond's increased power efficiency, Mystic Bond's ability for free casts, or Tenacious Bond's crit damage boost. And this is all well and good having an immortal pet running around, but what if we want that level of survivability? Well, then we need to look at the companions themselves and ask what buffs they can provide us so that we can start running around with immortality just like them. Starting off with literally every single robotic companion in the game. Since our companions now have 100% uptime, it means that we can run Guardian to provide us with 100% of our shields if they break every 20 seconds. Combine that with Manifold Bond, reducing the cooldown of your companion's abilities on each kill, where the enemy is affected by 3 or more status effects, and you start to paint a picture of infinite shield gating with this setup. This works very well on Kome, since not only are you able to apply a ton of status effects to help reduce cooldowns through Manifold Bond, she's also a very effective enabler of companions thanks to inflicting a ton of status procs, which allows them to run wild with their weapons' respective condition overload mods, allowing them to score the kills, reduce cooldown times, and spam Guardian to keep you alive in turn. I found this works really well on any other frame that is able to inflict a lot of statuses all at once, like Citrine with Prismatic Gem, or Lavos with his entire kit. But if you're running a primal weapon like the Epitaph, then it really works on any frame. However, you will be locked to melee if you choose to do so, as your primary weapon will be a dedicated synth reload weapon. And after messing around with this synergy and making use of my beloved Hound Princess, the XL bully who definitely hasn't eaten someone's toddler, I can confirm that this is some of the dumbest and easiest ways to survive with these high status focused frames. And this works just about on every robotic companion, but Hounds are my favourite since they deal really good damage, but you can run this on any Sentinel or Moa, fitted with the Vergalas, and still see good results. The build is the same one I used in the Mag Bible. Here it is, but for more detail as to why we're using each of the mods, link is in the top right, so feel free to go check it out. The next companion is the Vaska Kavat. Vaska on its own is a pretty good companion, able to deal really respectable damage through stacking multipliers and spreading slash procs with draining bite and contagious bond, resulting in it handily being able to clear very enemy dense rooms with ease. But the Vaska is on this list because of one thing specifically: a free well of life. With the Precept mod Transfusion, if you ever go down, the Vaska Kavat will rush to your aid, sacrificing 20% of its maximum HP to instantly revive you with full health and shields, after which Transfusion goes on a 120 second cooldown. While yes, the cooldown and health drain are a concern, we can remedy this. First of all, the health drain. It's mitigated by the other Precept mod, Draining Bite, which will heal it by 10% of his max HP each time it is cast. And because of the synth reinforced synergy, we never really have to worry about our Vaska taking enough damage to knock it below the 20% threshold so it can't use Transfusion anymore. As for the cooldown, get good. Okay, for real though, this isn't the most consistent form of survivability and really shouldn't be relied on as much. Vaska functions incredibly well as a damage companion primarily and a supportive companion secondarily. Consider it more so as a way to rapidly increase your DPS, therefore improving survivability, because dead enemies can't shoot you. And if you do happen to go down, treat transfusion as a nice occasional insurance policy. It won't make you totally immortal, but it does do a lot to enable your survivability at higher levels, especially on those squishier shield gating frames who can basically survive 2 hits before going down. For the build, we are running Fear Sense for a nice 200% damage multiplier, Sharpened Claws for an additional 300% damage boost and armor strip, Draining Bite for 5 stacks of slash procs which can be spread with Contagious Bond, and you want these mods to be in that order to ensure that we kill with Draining Bite and spread those procs to all nearby enemies. Momentous Bond for more elemental damage, Reinforced Bond and Synth Recharge for the main survivability synergy here, Tandem Bond for damage, Fetch for loot radius, and Territorial Aggression. It works very well if you're staying in one tile, but feel free to swap this out for a Retriever mod for more loot if you feel like it. The claws then are a full-on status build. Since we're relying on Draining Bite and Contagious Bond for damage, we run as much status chance as possible in the form of Sepsis Claws and Shock Collar, combined with Magnetic Claws and Immunity Resistance for a lot of high-value DOTs and Overguard damage. And we aren't using crit here to get the most out of Cull the Weak and Swipe to hit multiple enemies and spread more DOT procs. Lastly, I want to talk a bit about the Helminth Charger. This little guy really did surprise me with how much survivability he can provide. The Charger on its own isn't that much to write home about. Despite technically being a Kubro, it lacks access to the mecha set, meaning we can't do any funny mecha setups like I showed off last time. Its preset mod Proboscis really isn't anything special either. 100 damage on a single enemy with a really long cast time sucks so bad. And the only upside is that it can proc electric when modded with Shocking Claws for the sake of Archon stretch, but the mecha set does this, Contagious Bond does this, and there are other dedicated supportive options like Diriga and Deathcube that can fill that function of energy generation far more consistently. Its other precept, however, is actually pretty good. Trample, which causes it to dash forward in a straight line, dealing 160 damage, scaling with the base damage mods on your claws, to all enemies in its path, and gives the charger an extra 10% health, armor, and damage for each enemy hit with this charge for 5 seconds. While yes, this duration is incredibly short, it has a very low cooldown of 8-ish seconds anyway, so it'll have some form of this buff for most of the mission. Also, this charge seems to be able to hit enemies multiple times, which, while inconsistent, does allow for your charger to get some very, very high value buffs even in fairly low enemy dense situations. This health gain unfortunately doesn't seem to scale with health mods, but that doesn't matter anyway, as thanks to Reinforced Bond tech, we are basically immortal with this companion anyway, as long as you remember to swap weapon every 20 seconds. Okay, so the Charger is a fairly okay-ish companion that can give itself more health and damage, right? Wrong. See, instead of the mecha set, the Charger gets access to its own exclusive set of mods, being the Strain set, consisting of the companion mod Strain Eruption, the Beast Claws mod Strain Fever, the Warframe mod Strain Consume, and the melee mod Strain Infection. The Strain set is unique in that each mod in the set gets stronger the more Strain mods you add, since the buffs are dependent on the set bonus. The set allows your Helminth Charger to spawn 2 cysts on itself over 6 seconds that erupt into a maggot every 25 seconds. Each mod increases the number of cysts by 2 and causes them to grow over an additional 6 seconds. The corrosive damage of Eruption is so low we only really care about it buffing the other mods through its set. Strain Fever gives the Charger more damage for each cyst, which enables it to deal some pretty respectable damage. Strain Infection's crit damage buff is pretty good, topping out at 160%, but is very inconsistent, and most of the time you'll be sitting around an average of 80% critical damage. But the real reason we run this set is Strain Consume, which gives us more max health and health regeneration for each dead maggot we consume for 45 seconds. And you may be thinking, okay, so what? Health tanking sucks anyways. At a higher level, invincibility, shield gating, and invisibility are the only way to survive anyway. That's what I thought as well, but the amount of health regeneration you get from Strain Consume, and combined with Hunter Recovery, we can make a very effective health tank setup by using Rage, Hunter Adrenaline, Adaptation, Health Conversion, primed flow, and quick thinking. This makes our Warframes damn near impossible to kill, especially if you have some other form of health regeneration or survivability, but that really isn't needed. Here I'm able to comfortably survive with a health tank setup on Mag, and I've replaced our first ability with parasitic armor for even more comfort and survivabilities. Now, this synergy works very, very well right up until the charger dies. See, without the spawn of maggots for strain consume or companion damage for hunter recovery, we really struggle for survivability. But hey, reinforced bond tech makes them immortal anyway. This is some of the dumbest shit I've ever seen, and this is on Mag, a frame with doo-doo-ass garbage base health and armor with no raid to recover it save for Helminth. Slapping this shit on frames like Inaros, Nidus, Kalervo with their higher base health and armor values, combined with health recovery, makes them damn near unkillable. But putting this on frames with CC and damage reduction makes them untouchable. You know what? Fuck it. Base Loki, the Warframe with the lowest combined health and armor values in the game. I slap this build on in and boom, health tank. And that's before doing any fancy stuff to improve survivability, like moving. This shit is insane. You can go incredibly long times in missions just with Helminth Charger health tanking alone. I will say you do kind of need the whole set for this to function really, really well, as the more cis you can spawn through the set, the more maggots you get, the more health regeneration you get. But still, it is so goddamn good. For the Charger build itself, we are using our combo of Reinforced Bond and Synth Deconstruct for survivability, Trample, Momentous, Contagious, and Tandem Bond to buff the Charger's damage, Strain Eruption for the set bonus, Hunter Recovery to provide our Warframe with even more healing, and lastly, Fetch and Resourceful Retriever, but if you want more damage than loot, you can run Vicious Bond over the Retriever mod here. The claws look like this: Precision Conditioning for base damage, Bite for crit chance and crit damage, Shocking Claws, Magnetic Claws, and Shock Collar for magnetic and electric, Immunity Resistance for status damage, Strain Fever for more damage, and Cull the Weak for additive CO and more damage on non-crits. And you may be looking at these numbers and thinking, what the fuck, where did the toxin come from? Well, Helminth Claws, similar to the Vulpefilers and Predacites, get innate elemental damage, in this case toxin damage, which is 25% of the base damage affected by base damage mods, and does not combine with any other elements, allowing us to inflict both toxin and electric, which is a nice boost in damage from not only Cull of the Weak, but also immunity resistance. Before we wrap things up and you all go and run off to buy the Strain set and I get accused of market manipulation again, I want to give a massive thank you to Darku for helping me pull together these companion builds, as well as RabbitofHarmony for not only drawing the thumbnail for this video, but also pointing out the interaction of the synth set with Reinforced Bond to me in the first place over on the Discord. Speaking of, if you want to talk builds, find people to run missions with, or just want to shoot the shit, feel free to join the Discord server. We recently hit 100 members and I'll leave the link in the description below. But even if you're not in it for the socialization aspect, it's still a one-stop shop for full breakdowns of all the builds I use in my videos. Either way, this was a lot of fun to mess around with, and it's probably a bug and it's going to get fixed as soon as this goes up, so if you're seeing it around time of release, go enjoy. Wait, why am I telling people this again?